Imagine waking up in a world where another species of human not only walked beside us, but might have outsmarted us. They crafted tools before we did. They communicated. They thrived. And then they disappeared. What happened to them? And could they have been better than us all along? Imagine standing deep in the jungles of Flores, Indonesia. The year is 2003. A team of archaeologists, hot, tired, and skeptical, dig slowly through ancient soil in a limestone cave called Liang Bua. They're not expecting much, maybe some animal bones, broken tools, or signs of Homo sapiens from 10,000 years ago. But what they find is not just surprising, it's impossible. They uncover a skull, small, incredibly small. At first glance, it looks like it could belong to a child. But then, the teeth, the jaw, the proportions. This wasn't a child at all. This was a fully grown adult of a completely different species of human. And not only that, the bone structure suggests they had brains nearly 3 times smaller than ours, yet complex enough to make tools, hunt cooperatively, and maybe even communicate. The world is stunned. Scientists name this newly discovered species Homo floresiensis, but the media quickly dubs them something catchier, the Hobbit. And just like the fictional Hobbits, they seem mythical, almost too strange to be real. A 3.5-foot tall human living in isolation long after the Neanderthals had vanished. How could something so intelligent, so distinct, and so close to us remain hidden for so long? But the real question isn't just how they lived. It's why they disappeared. And what it means for the only humans left standing today, us. When scientists first held the skull of Homo floresiensis in their hands, one detail screamed louder than all the others: the brain size. It was barely a third the volume of ours, roughly equal to a chimpanzee's. That fact alone should have made them primitive, clumsy, incapable of the kind of intelligence we associate with human. But that's not what the evidence said. Around the remains, archaeologists found stone tools, sharp, complex, and purposefully crafted. They weren't random rocks. These were the results of careful planning. There were signs of fire use, too: charred bones, ash layers, even evidence suggesting coordinated hunting strategies, especially for catching large animals like the now extinct pygmy elephants that once roamed Flores. That's where the confusion exploded. How does a creature with such a small brain act so human? This single contradiction shattered long-held assumptions about intelligence. For decades, scientists believed brain size was a reliable measure of cognitive power. But the Hobbit defied that rule completely. Their actions suggested memory, foresight, cooperation, maybe even rudimentary language. And that led to an even stranger possibility. What if brain efficiency matters more than size? What if Homo floresiensis developed smarter wiring, not bigger brains? Some researchers began to suggest that evolution on an isolated island like Flores might have forced these hominins to become more efficient, downsizing physically, but optimizing mentally. It's called island dwarfism, a well-documented phenomenon in both animals and humans. But this case, it was on another level. What's haunting is the thought: if such a species could exist in such a remote place for so long, what else might be out there we've missed? Or worse, what did we replace? For decades, we thought we were alone, the sole survivors of a long evolutionary ladder. Every other hominin, from Neanderthals to Denisovans, had long vanished by the time our ancestors spread across the globe. But Homo floresiensis broke that illusion. Not only did they exist, they existed recently. Evidence suggests they may have lived as recently as 50,000 years ago, and maybe even later. Now pause for a second. That means while Homo sapiens were painting caves in Europe and shaping tools in Africa, a completely different type of human, shorter, smaller, but eerily intelligent, was living, breathing, and building on a remote Indonesian island. This wasn't just an evolutionary cousin. This was a parallel story, one we never expected. But here's where it gets chilling. When modern humans reached Southeast Asia, likely spreading from Africa along coastal routes, other hominins began to vanish. Neanderthals disappeared in Europe, Denisovans faded in Asia, and on Flores, the Hobbits may have suffered the same fate. Why? It might have been competition. It might have been disease. But the darkest theory, we did it. Our ancestors may have encountered them and wiped them out. It's an uncomfortable thought that we didn't just survive evolution, we dominated it. That somewhere in our deep history is a moment when one type of human looked into the eyes of another and chose violence. And yet, despite their disappearance, they're still with us. In mystery, in myth, in the whispered legends of local Flores tribes who speak of the Ebu Gogo, small people with strange voices, who lived in the hills, stole food and mimicked speech. The match is too close to ignore. What if they didn't vanish as long ago as we think? What if they're part of a forgotten chapter, not lost, but hidden? When scientists examined the first skull of Homo floresiensis, something didn't add up. It was tiny, about 1/3 the size of a modern human brain, roughly the size of a grapefruit. By all evolutionary logic, that should have meant limited intelligence, right? That's what we've always believed. Bigger brain, smarter species. But these so-called hobbits, they broke that rule completely. Despite their miniature brains, they made stone tools, not just crude ones, but surprisingly advanced. Tools shaped with intention. Sharpened edges, flakes removed systematically. They hunted, butchered animals, and possibly even used fire. That kind of tool use, it's something we associate with early Homo sapiens or Neanderthals, species with much larger brains. So how did Homo floresiensis pull this off? One theory suggests their brains were wired differently. Think of it this way. If our brains are like powerful laptops, theirs might have been like ultra-efficient smartphones, smaller but optimized. Some neuroscientists believe their frontal lobes, responsible for problem-solving and planning, may have been disproportionately well developed. It's possible evolution didn't shrink their intelligence, it just made it more compact. And it raises a haunting question. Have we underestimated other extinct species too? Our bias has always been that humans, modern humans, were the most intelligent life forms ever to walk the earth. But if Homo floresiensis, with their tiny brains and island isolation, could survive for hundreds of thousands of years, what else are we missing? What if intelligence wasn't a race toward us, but a tree with many branches, and we're just the last one left? Let's face it, we've always looked at evolution like a ladder. Start with apes at the bottom. Climb up through the stages, Homo habilis, erectus, Neanderthals, until finally us, Homo sapiens, the peak of intelligence. But here's the truth that Homo floresiensis forces us to confront. Evolution isn't a ladder, it's a web. A messy, unpredictable, brutally efficient web. On the island of Flores, evolution didn't care about size or dominance. It cared about adaptability. When food was scarce, evolution said, shrink. When isolation demanded resourcefulness, it said, innovate quietly. And Homo floresiensis did just that. They didn't build civilizations. They didn't carve their names in stone. But they survived through volcanic eruptions, predator invasions, and climate shifts. Think about it. While our ancestors on the mainland were fighting mammoths and perfecting fire, these tiny hominids were quietly thriving, using limited resources with maximum efficiency. And yet, for years, scientists thought the fossils were diseased modern humans. Why? Because we couldn't accept the idea that something small and primitive could be that clever. It's an uncomfortable truth. We measure intelligence by our standards, language, technology, cities, AI. But nature doesn't. Nature measures intelligence by one thing, survival. And by that standard, these hobbits may have been smarter than we'll ever fully understand. They knew their environment intimately. They adapted without expansion. They left almost no trace, which, in a brutal natural world, might just be the most intelligent move of all. Now let's ask the uncomfortable question. If Homo floresiensis were so smart, why did they vanish? It's easy to assume they were wiped out by a disaster, a volcanic eruption, a predator, disease. But what if the real threat was us? The timing is suspicious. Evidence suggests Homo floresiensis disappeared around 50,000 years ago. Guess who showed up in that same window? Homo sapiens us, expanding out of Africa, flooding into Asia and the islands of Southeast Asia like a tidal wave of fire and ambition. We were faster, taller, more aggressive, armed with complex language, tribal networks, and deadly tools. To us, a different kind of human may have seemed like competition. Or worse, prey. Let's say you're a group of modern humans landing on a new island. You find strange, small humans living in caves. They don't look like you. They don't speak like you. Do you welcome them? Or do you fear them? History says we feared anything that wasn't us. From Neanderthals to Denisovans to Homo floresiensis, every other branch of the human tree went extinct after we arrived. Coincidence? Or a quiet genocide written in stone tools and silence? But here's the real tragedy. We didn't just destroy a species. We may have erased an entire way of thinking. What if Homo floresiensis had a form of intelligence we can't even comprehend? What if they communicated without speech, sensed weather changes through instinct, remembered geography like migrating birds? We'll never know, because we didn't make room for different. We replaced them, and then we forgot them, until a few bones in a cave forced us to remember. Flores is full of unexplored terrain. Dense forests, hidden valleys, places no archaeologist has ever reached. Could there be more bones? Or even survivors? It might sound wild, like something out of a movie. But we once thought the coelacanth fish went extinct with the dinosaurs, until someone pulled one up from the ocean in 1938. The world still hides secrets, and Homo floresiensis, this tiny, clever, forgotten species, might be one of them. Maybe they're gone. Maybe they vanished in silence, like smoke fading into the jungle air. Or maybe, just maybe, they're still out there, watching us from the shadows of the world they once ruled. We often think we're the pinnacle of evolution, but stories like Homo floresiensis remind us we're just one chapter in a much older book, a book still being written, with pages lost, torn, or hidden in the jungle. If this story made you feel small in the best way, like there's still magic in the world, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. What do you think happened to them?